Who said you can't have a nice sound for $219? This is the SIMGOT EA1000 Fermat, priced less than the EA2000 which it replaces, so the new flagship is cheaper than the old flagship. The unit has one of the most beautiful constructions, full metallic shells. They come with high quality tips from the factory. As recently I've been having a harder and harder time finding tips that suit my ears and usually just use the DD HIFI ST35, it will be interesting to see how the EA1000 Fermat works for music. This is an EM with a single dynamic driver and it has such a large opening on the inner belly of the EM that you can actually hear most of the sounds that are happening in your room. They offer almost no passive noise isolation. That is a negative for an EM because typically you expect those to offer some passive noise isolation, but they don't leak that much. All in all, it's a fair experience. The cable is one of the shorter cables, as you can see, not the longest, but it is a very high quality cable. You can see the braiding inside, you can see the cable, and it feels really good in hands. There is protection against scratches already installed on the cable, but happily the EMs have been taken outdoors and they present 0 scratches. I'm really pleased with this. Most EMs, when they have a metallic shell that is this glossy, will have some scratches after some usage. They have a beautiful faceplate which is made of glass, also no scratches, so high quality materials on the EA1000 Fermat. They have replaceable nozzles which allow you to tune the sound. You can get multiple sonic signatures out of the EA1000 Fermat. The ear tips are held in place quite tightly, so it is quite hard to remove them to replace the nozzles, but in the end you will be able to do it. I trust in you, you can do it. It is pretty easy to drive the EA1000 Fermat and it is not sensitive to noise, so you can pair them with most sources. Even with Fuel Q15 there is no background noise, no hissing, no problems, even though some of the more recent EMs have been sensitive to Q15's higher output impedance on the balanced connector. That being said, the cable on the Fermat is a single-ended cable, so that may have something to do with why it doesn't have any hissing with Fuel Q15. The sound of the SIMGOT EA1000 Fermat is one of the more romantic, boomier sounds, which has a lot of mid bass, a lot of upper bass actually, and the bass depth reaches about 40 Hz, below which it rolls off. The mid-range is a natural mid-range which has a romantic tonality. It is warm in tuning, it has a bit of upper bass bleed, and it has this really warm musical feeling to it, never fatiguing, never harsh, but still with a pretty good resolution. Since they are open back, you can hear the soundstage presenting quite clearly. They have a lot of space between you and the instruments. There is also quite a bit of space between you and the singer. The singer is placed somewhere behind the instruments. You also get a pretty good premiere and drum set presentation, but you don't get a lot of bass guitar presentation. So you get this sound which is pretty detailed, pretty clean, but not very sharp. The treble is not rolled off, so you get a pretty good overall treble extension. You get a natural treble. The treble happens in a 3D space, so you get an airy treble which is projected all around you, and while it is a bit sharp and it has a good resolution, the treble is never harsh nor fatiguing. Somehow the texture, the transient representation of the EA1000 Fermat is pretty soft and the transients tend to be soft. This means that textures have a slightly wet character to them, and at times it is a bit too wet. So for example, at times the drums sound like they are being hit while being wet. The sound is so wet that sometimes you just don't feel any texture at all, even where there should be some texture. For example, trumpets will sound relaxed, will sound playful, while trumpets typically should sound pretty harsh and pretty aggressive. So you'll never get an aggressive presentation with the SIMGOT EA1000 Fermat. Is it a negative? Is it a positive? That is up to you. Because for me, I think the sound works pretty well. I never mind not having fatiguing elements, but at the same time, you sometimes want a bit more resolution. In the $220 price range, no other EMs have a better resolution per se. Usually they just have a different coloration, which either helps with getting the feeling of more detail, or they tend to hinder this more detail from being presented. For example, some EMs tend to be very sharp and very dry, which creates the feeling of a high resolution sound with a ton of detail, but at the same time it's just fatiguing and it's not very well refined. With the SIMGOT EA1000 Fermat, you get that high-end resolution and detail, but at the same time you don't get the feeling that it is struggling. You don't get a fatiguing element out of it. You just get music, romantic music, pleasing music, you get fun music. I took the time to compare the EA1000 Fermat to other mid-range EMs, for example the KVR's Quintet, and the Quintet has a more colored sound in the mid-range, so the mid-range is less natural. Also the EA1000 Fermat has far more mid-bass and upper bass, so they create a feeling of space, of volume and of power a bit more than the KVR's Quintet. Most of the EMs, even in the same price range, don't have the same quality to the cable, so I have to emphasize on this, the cable is of a special quality. I have not seen a cable of this quality before in the $220 price range. It's just so nice in person. Since they will stay scratch free and the cable looks good, I think that just based on the build quality and the sonic resolution alone, you could order the EA1000 Fermat and be happy with them. It's just a pleasing overall experience. But if you are picky, they also can present resolution in some songs quite nicely. And another pretty powerful competitor would be the BQIZ Winter. The Winter is a very relaxed and smooth listening experience, so it is natural that the SIMGOT EA1000 Fermat has a much better overall resolution and much better overall clarity. The Fermat is also warmer in the mid-range, warmer in the bass, it has more bass and more power to the overall sound. The sound of the Winter is relaxed and it is a very different presentation. With the Winter you can listen to basically any music and feel that the music is soft. It is just pleasing to listen to, but not very engaging. With the EA1000 Fermat, you feel that the music is not soft, it is natural, but it is warm, it is romantic, and it has a lot of volume, a lot of saturation, and a lot of contrast to it. Especially the high end can be quite contrasty, but the grain-free presentation, which has a soft character, can at times be a bit too smooth and a bit too relaxed for rock, for example. Especially HEG music, like electronic music with a lot of micro textures where you want to hear that very fine resolution happening, or rock or metal. The SIMGOT EA1000 Fermat can be a bit too smooth, and even SIMGOT has slightly better EMs for rock and for metal. Here I am talking about the much lesser priced EM6L from SIMGOT, about which I will likely publish a full written review as well. And the EM6L has a much better overall resolution. The EM6L is more dry in the character, so it doesn't have this very wet character. It has a bit more grain, but at the same time it works better for rock and for metal. The EM6L doesn't have the same level of a cable quality. The EM6L has a thinner, more flexible cable compared to the EA1000 Fermat, but both of them have a good construction quality, so I wouldn't complain about either. I would generally use the EM6L more if I wanted to enjoy some rock and some metal, while the EA1000 Fermat does better with acoustic music, with classical, with ballads, with anything that you want to sound relaxed and pleasing, even with jazz and some smoother music. You know, this one is just the kind that you dance to, while the EM6L is the kind of EM that you jump to, that you party to. So each one of them has a distinct sound of its own. I prefer the EM6L, which is less priced, since it follows with my personal taste a bit better. Is the SIMGOT EA1000 Fermat a good EM? Of course, it is pretty good. At $220 it has a good price performance ratio as well. It is not steeply overpriced, it is quite good in the price performance ratio, and it has a good construction quality, plus comes with this high-end cable. Would I recommend it to you? If you like a softer sound, if you like a bloomy sound with a strong mid bass, with a bit of boominess, and if you enjoy ballads and the softer music presentation too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having fun at Audiophile Heaven. I hope you'll consider liking this video. It helps me a lot. Also, please subscribe to Audiophile Heaven so that more people can see my channel. The number of subscribers does determine how much you are getting recommended. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye bye!